As we do start, Outdoors Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the lands where we gather across the state, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge important roles that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play in relation to the land, sky and waterways that have been used for outdoor activities since time immemorial. I'm in Brisbane, or Meanjin, on Yagara country, which is a place of the Jagera and Turrbal peoples. If you'd like to, you can pop in the chat the place you're joining and the country that you're joining from today. And we also acknowledge that Outdoors Queensland receives funding from the Queensland government, and the Queensland government also provides funding to support outdoor activities right across the state. And we do appreciate that and acknowledge the work that multiple government departments and ministers do in relation to outdoor activities, which includes sport and recreation, who are in the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport. So this is the third episode of Coffee and Conversation for 2023. I'm Dom Courtney, Executive Officer of Outdoors Queensland, and my co-host today is Mark Squires, our Operations Manager. And a big thank you, Mark, for all the work you do. Welcome everyone, whether you're a member of Outdoors Queensland or not, including interstate visitors. See Laurie from Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. G'day, Laurie. Thanks for joining us again. And as I said before, we are recording the session, and they will be available on the website and on YouTube. I'm not sure how many millions of viewers we get every week or every month for these ones, but I'm sure it's up there somewhere. It's us and Joe Rogan, I think, at the moment up the top. So yeah, we're killing it. Feel free to ask any questions, make comments as we go along. It is a conversation, so we really encourage that as we do go along. I've got a little bit of an agenda there. It's not a hidden agenda. There's a few things in there, mostly about some opportunities. We'll also talk about COVID protocols, but that seems like shouldn't be forgotten, but it's still there. So if you've got anything to add to the agenda, even during the meeting, please speak up. Welcome to add additional things. And if you want to discuss any topics that need serious discussion in a future session, please contact me or Mark. We're always happy to add different topics, particularly on a particular area that you think needs to be covered. So just to talk a little bit about the COVID protocols, the Queensland Health, that we're still at the traffic light system that Queensland Health's using now. So that's the green level, which is baseline. So that they're saying under that there's low rates of community transmission and we're not in a COVID-19 wave. But a green level doesn't mean that COVID's all over, even though that's their lowest level. They're still saying some of these standard preventative protocols. So this same diagram that we've seen now for about 2 years, I think, the stay at home when sick, get up to date with boosters and vaccinations. And there was just an announcement in the last couple of weeks about an additional booster approved by the federal health authorities. Wearing masks to reduce risks. You guys have seen this a million times, but it is important to remember that basic message that they do keep throwing out there, which is if you're feeling sick, stay home and get tested. And I think that's an important one to keep in the back of our minds as we move along, particularly when we're thinking about the health and well-being of workplaces and groups. So yeah. And the Education Queensland rules and protocols, they've still got the same wording on their website. It hasn't changed for quite a while. The Education Department, I think it was last updated on 17th of January. So they basically just say risk assessments should be done before you start any activities in relation to excursions and camps. And you should take into account infection control measures if anyone develops symptoms of COVID-19 or other respiratory illnesses. So that's sort of what they're saying. They're saying basically take it into account and do the activities if it's okay to do so. So it's quite a decent statement on the Education Queensland website. So that's pretty much it from COVID, unless anyone else has anything on that wonderful topic. But I feel like we've talked plenty on COVID. So yeah. I'll just check. No, all good. Cool. So a few other options. I just wanted to flag the Outdoors Queensland annual general meeting. So that's going to be held on Wednesday, the 15th of March. It'll be face-to-face here at Sports House Milton, where our offices are. We also have the option for online via Zoom, if anyone wants to join that way as well. Mark's just shared in the chat a link to the web page. We're also going to run a forum immediately before the AGM, which is an opportunity to actually have a chat in person about various issues affecting the outdoors, similar to what we do in these sessions. But this one's actually face-to-face, as well as potentially online if anyone wants to join in that way. But the AGM itself is actually all about the members having their say. And we do need as many members as possible to attend, or at least fill in the forms and appoint a proxy to make sure we have a quorum so we can have the AGM. There won't be an election of directors at this AGM because we have 2 vacancies on the board and we received 2 nominations, which is very neat and efficient. But so there'll be no election of directors. So I just wanted to flag that. But we do have a vote for an election of an honorary life member. So Gillian Duncan's been nominated for the work that she's contributed to the outdoors over many, many years. So Gillian's nominated, and that's one for members to consider at the AGM, which it'd be lovely to see if that does go ahead with the members' approval. We've sent out quite a few bulletins with details and links to the forms that you need to fill in if you are a financial member. But the really important, we do need the notification and covenant form and the RSVP forms completed if you do want to attend, and you can appoint a proxy to attend on your behalf if you need to do that. So any questions on AGM? No, you're all sorted. Forms filling out or in the process, if not filled out already, your beauty. Righto. Moving right along. And I might remind you of that later on too. I'm going to reserve the right. I'll just hand over to Graham Pringle, who's the founder and training director now of Youth Flourish Outdoors. Graham, I'm going to just read out what was on your website, Graham, because it's a good little description of you, and you'll probably blush and be embarrassed, but that's all right. Graham is PhD candidate, MA Outdoor Education, DIP Social Science in Psychology, Diploma in Social Science Psychology. You're going to have to tell me what CIV is. That certificate for adventure-based youth work. Yep. And Program Director of Youth Flourish Outdoor. Conducts the research behind the model and frequently trains adults and presents at conferences domestically and internationally. It's a good little snapshot, Graham. But I've even invited Graham to come along and tell us a bit about what Youth Flourish Outdoors is up to and what the training opportunities that they have. So over to you, Graham.
Thank you. And apologies if the sound gets a bit strange. I'm sitting in a park somewhere on the Gold Coast. About to go and meet a client, so had to do it just before the job.
Flourishing outdoors, Graham. It's good to see.
Yes, we are. YFO is a charity. We're a mental health service, and we entirely deliver. Most of the work we do is with young people outdoors, and I said most of because today I'm actually just doing normal youth work, taking a young fellow around for licenses and orthodontist appointments and things like this. And it's a young bloke I've known for like 6 years on and off, and he just comes back for help every now and then. But most of the work we do is in the southeast Queensland quadrant. So we've got, I think, a staff member up at Maroochydore, another one down around Robina, and others out at Boona, and that covers the Ipswich area as well. So we're operating in that area. Everyone works from home. We don't have a venue. We don't even really have an office. It's a very virtual business, and the guys get in their car, go meet a client, take them out for 3 hours, bring them back again. And in that 3 hours, we try to help the young person regulate and function as well as they possibly can. And I think everybody in this room knows that we function really well when we're outdoors, and outdoors physically active seems to be the magic recipe. Now, Dom, I think, asked me to come along because I recently submitted my PhD. I'm still a candidate for the next few months while that gets assessed, etc., and rewritten. But I've come to some conclusions about what adventure therapy is and how it works. So I've got a little presentation for you. And Dom, could you just tell me when I'm getting close to time? I'll try not to rabbit on. So my project was about how to address mental health concerns amongst young people using the outdoors as the agent of change. And things moved around a little bit as I did that because it's like a 7-year project. And where I ended up is not at all where I expected to be. I really didn't. The project required me to bring together the complex trauma literature, which explains where mental health, what causes mental health problem, and how that works, and how to also heal those problems, and bring that together with the adventure therapy practice so that we could figure out how to use this approach to mental health in the outdoors. So I've got a little presentation here, which I will try and share. Not very familiar with Zoom, but I'll do my best.
So that's working, Graham, if you just change it to the presentation view.
Yep. How's that? Everyone can see that?
Yep. Cool.
So where I ended up was at human rights. I did not expect this at all. And the reason I got there was, it was a few things, but there's some particular ways of doing adventure therapy, mostly done in the United States, but we have a staff member currently who's of this mind, and we're trying to sort of help them through this, their concept, where human rights are routinely withheld, denied, and violated in some adventure therapy practices, which you wouldn't really believe, but it gets quite extreme in some places. And in the States, they've got quite a lot of organisations that involuntarily take kids out into very remote places and keep them there against their wishes for 90 days at a time on average, and things like that. And they're no longer killing people, which it was a real thing. There were numerous deaths in this version of adventure therapy. They're not doing that. So physically, it seems to be somewhat safer, but not necessarily psychologically safer. And I had to try and figure out how to speak to that, how to explain to them how they might be able to do things differently. And human rights seems to be the basic minimum standard worldwide. And I thought, you can't argue against human rights, can you? When you suggest that that's a minimum standard we operate by, they argued bizarrely. Because it interferes with their mechanism of change. So I'm just going to move some things around here so I can see. So sorry, what's that? Oh, so I'm not sure what was said there, but I'll keep going. And sorry about the wind that might be blowing the voice off my microphone. So complex trauma is another way of understanding mental health. And effectively, it means that we have mental health problem not because of genes or some biological problem for which you would take drugs. Where we have a mental health problem because bad things have happened to us. And they can be an isolated thing, but for complex trauma, we're talking about things that interfered with a person's developmental trajectory right back in infancy. And so what that means is, and it can be an overly strict family. It could be living in poverty in an area of low socioeconomic area where people are constantly worried about thefts and burglaries or whatever. It doesn't have to be direct physical assault of young people, although that's clearly one of the things that would cause some trauma. So complex trauma is how a young person doesn't arrive at adulthood equipped for adulthood, and they have a whole bunch of things which includes all the diagnoses things you would get from the standard way of understanding mental health. Effectively, there's two problems. One is their sense of self is disrupted and they don't know who they are. Very controlling families can create this. So they're not really sure where they stand on in particular issues. And sometimes they can even have versions of themselves that they present in response to different situations. So yeah, if I'm feeling threatened, this version of myself will present itself to protect myself. But if I'm in a loving, nurturing sort of situation, then this part of myself will present forward, which that works unless the wrong parts of us are presenting ourselves to the wrong situations. That doesn't work. The second part of it is our sense of belonging can be really disrupted, or can be overly intense in a particular place. But what we're talking about is belonging in terms of family and community and things like that. But a lot of people with complex trauma also feel divorced or dissociated from nature. They don't understand how it works, and they're very threatened. A lot of the kids we take out, regardless of age, they walk into the bush the first time, they'll see a spider's web across the track and we'll have to walk around it because they're just really, really threatened. They won't go under it or anything like this. Or they might want to kill the spider because it's such a big threat. It's just a bit over the top. It doesn't take long before they start to find the natural world to be a nice place and very comforting, but initially it can be really threatening. They're also often not very good at using their bodies. So gross motor skills in particular, we notice, are really often quite poor because they've not been safe in their body. So they're able to separate their mind from their physical sensations. If they were in a place where they were constantly hungry or hurt by people physically, etc., they may be very divorced from their body. And that can present itself really interestingly. But when we're outdoors doing things, we're in nature, we're generally with somebody who's a nice person and we're using our body, it helps bring these connections together. So that sense of belonging in myself in this place with this person is really easy to get to. You don't need to be a therapist to do that. You just need to be a nice person who's comfortable in the outdoors, who has their own fairly strong sense of self, so that young person can see that and learn to figure out who they might be. Just to quickly move through a few things, I won't try and spell out 7 years of research. This is my hamburger model that I came up with. Using some big words, the ecological dynamic is just how all things, people will be familiar with a weather map where troughs and fronts and highs and lows come in, and they all push other things around on that weather map. And it's a little bit chaotic, but it's also kind of understandable once we understand what the rules are. And then things change because something happens, a low becomes bigger than was expected. So that moves everything else around. So that's the best way to explain ecological dynamics. Everything in nature is moving in response to each other. It's like a dance, I guess. And it's quite a robust theory. Used in biology and astronomy and in psychotherapy. So this is just the idea that everything's constantly moving and that we're part of this dance, and we're trying to harness or help the young person to attach to the bits of the dance that work best for them. That means we don't force them to do things, or we don't tell them what's going to happen next. We put invitations out and then they grab that invitation and run with it. What that means could mean that we go to a park and we've got some balls. We've also got our phone with a geocaching app on it. And we just see which of those things a young person wants to deal with. And then they might just want to go down to the water or something and throw sticks. Then that's what we do. The activity is not important. It's, are they in nature? Are they active? Are they safe in those places? And are they with somebody who they feel safe and comfortable with, who can help them to sort of figure out that development piece again? So that's the ecological dynamic is the dish we mix our therapy up in. The 4x5 = 4, I'll explain in a sec, but the practitioner over top of that is really important because they've got to make that ecological dynamic safe. They've got to be a safe person and someone who's effectively a role model. So they've got decisions to make around young person wants to go over there, but that looks dangerous because there's a dog that's barking a lot and that might trigger them off. So maybe I'll invite them to come over this way and do something different to get away from that dog, because I know that previously dogs have really upset them. It can be as simple as that. So the process that I came up with, there's 4 phases in any program development. Effectively, you have to get people safe and then work through the experience. And we have to have some impact on what's going on afterwards. The 5 domains, pretty obvious. We judge, is this the right time? How much time do we spend on this activity with these people in this natural environment? And how do we connect our mind to all of those different things? So that's the constant movement is always happening there. So in each phase, we employ those 5 domains. And we hope to get 4 benefits, and that's benefits in attachment or relationships, in our ability to manage or refuse stress, our understanding of how the world works, which is schemas, and hopefully improve skills. So as long as we're getting some improvement in those 4 things, we're doing the job. And you can use the same process as therapy. You can use it in outdoor education, probably even use it in outdoor recreation and in adventure tourism, I would imagine. On Monday, I'm with Stanley River Environmental Ed Centre. We're working through this framework so that they can use it as a pedagogical approach for their whole of centre. And then it gets, when you really want to look at the details of my research, it gets it really involved. And this picture is the best I could come up with to try and explain the flow through and how all these things mesh together. But if you want the whole box and dice, we'd probably have to spend a bit longer on it. I think the basic thing I've learned is that if the mental health problem happens when people's human rights are denied or trampled upon. So the mechanism of healing is actually just to really firmly apply human rights to the situation that the young person's in at every moment. And what I encourage people to do is look at your client groups that come to your centres or you work with, look at the human rights conventions from the United Nations that apply, and this to use it as a checklist. Are we doing this? Do people feel this? And that would be a pretty useful way of ensuring that you're providing something that is probably, from a mental health perspective, really helpful, even if that's not your game. You don't need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a talk therapist to run an activity where people feel really good and help to find themselves. And so I'd encourage everybody to think about the programs and things that you do under the lens of that human rights. And to the extent where, from a therapeutic point of view, I'm encouraging people to publish on the websites. These are the human rights conventions that apply to our work, and we promise that we'll adhere to all of these things. And if we don't, please send us an email so that we can do it better. So that's effectively the stop sharing. That's effectively what I came up with after 7 years. It looks pretty simple when you stick it on a single sheet of paper.
Well done, Graham. Thank you for sharing with us. Does anyone have any questions for Graham? Bill, straight off the bat, yeah?
Graham, how have you looked at children who are the victims of parental alienation? I assume you have, given what you've been talking about.
Parental alienation, you mean those that a parent has been removed or hasn't removed themselves from the family and they're not allowed to see them anymore?
Where one parent prevents a child or children from seeing the other parent? Yeah, that happens. That's pretty routine. Yeah, so not specifically. I mean, there hasn't been complex trauma covers all of those things, because that could be a problem for a while, but there might be other problems in there as well, and that everybody moves across what is actually the significant problem for them at that time. So yes, we certainly have young people who want to see a parent and can't, and that's being controlled by the other parent and sometimes by the courts as well. Yeah, for sure. We also, Bill, you might be working with a young person. We quite often try to work with the family. I mean, every time we take a young person back home, we try to talk to the family about what's happened and help them bridge all those gaps, but not specifically looking at So the young fella I'm going to visit today, I don't think he's physically seen his father in some years. His mother doesn't want him to because the father was not particularly nice. And there are restraining orders out on him. But this young fella's now reached the age of adulthood, and he can make the decision as to how and when he connects with his father. So I'm probably going to be talking to him about this either today or in subsequent sessions. This is like first time I've seen him in a year.
Would you mind if I passed via Dom a contact for the woman who runs the Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo Foundation, which works on the issue of parental alienation? I think there's a lot that you've said that would be very helpful for what they're doing, and she might be able to share some ideas with you, because I think what
Sure.
you've done is awesome. It's
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll get that to Dom. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Graham. Has anyone else got a question for Graham? I think wonderful, Graham. I'm not sure, you're probably well aware of this, but there's also the human rights of the child statement, which I think is in more youth-friendly terms, which I know we've shared in the past. Maybe it'd be timely if we dig that up and share it again, because it was something that we certainly have put out there as well. It's in, rather than the full-on UN flowery language, it's a bit more child-friendly or youth-friendly. Yeah.
In fact, all of those conventions can get, they're legally put together, so the language can be a bit difficult. And so if people are going to go down this path, you really need to convert it into language that applies to the work that you do. And some of it is about what governments need to do. We as individuals can't do something about providing a minimum standard of income for everybody in the country, for instance, which is one of the UN convention points. So you've always got to get these things and explain them in terminology that works for your work.
Yep. Great. Thanks very much, Graham. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you. Look, I will have to leave at about 1:45 to go to see this young fella, but otherwise I'll put myself on mute and I'll listen.
Terrific. Thanks, Graham. Thanks for joining us. Right, I just have to find my screen again. Sorry, just bear with me for one moment. This is what happens when we switch between sharing worlds. There we are. Thank you. Another training development opportunity, Savannah Guides. So they've got some field schools. I mentioned this in the last session we had. They've actually got one starting next week, which is the Savannah Lander train departing from Cairns, heading out across for 4 days. You can join it as a non-member, but there's another one in October, which is in Carnarvon Gorge. So I just wanted to let you know about that option as well. I'm guessing it might be too late for most of us to catch the train from Cairns on Monday, but think about the Carnarvon Gorge one. But it does clash with the Outdoors Queensland Awards, so you'll probably have second thoughts about that. So feel free to check out their what the Savannah Guides have got coming. This next one, and I don't even know if I'm going to try to get that video to play. I might give it a go, but this is about the domestic commercial vessel review, which we talked about a lot last session. So I'm going to see if this will play, but I have a funny feeling it's going to just open in a web page, which is what it's doing. Just tell me if this is going to work. That one. And then you're probably going to tell me the sound's not working. Have you got any sound? Okay. We won't worry about the video. Basically, the video says AMPS is going to already dealing with all the one system for all the domestic commercial vessels. As we talked about last time. So what we've done in the meantime after our last meeting is we've done the survey, which closed this week. And we're putting that together as the Outdoor Council of Australia. And thanks to everyone who completed the survey about the impact of these requirements and the review. I think we had around 30 organisations across all Australian states and territories, other than Tasmania, and over, I think it was 1,200 vessels across all those organisations who filled in the survey. We'll share a summary of that survey with the independent panel that's doing the review. We won't identify any operators. And once we've heard back from the panel, we'll share more information with the outdoor sector. But I just want to say thanks to everyone who did fill in the survey. It is well worthwhile. So thank you for that. Any questions on that one or comments?
Don, did you want me to share the video? I can show it on my screen if you want.
Oh, can you?
Yep.
Yeah. I think it was to do with it not liking the sound on Zoom,
Yeah.
but
So Mark, if you give me access, I can share it because I've got the sound access.
You and our co-host there, Laurie.
Thank you. Yeah. Continue. Beautiful. Share sound. Coming. Like I'm operating a ship.
In Australia, one national system regulates all domestic commercial vessels. If you own, operate or work on a domestic commercial vessel, you need to meet the safety rules. What you need to do depends on your vessel, type of operation, where you operate, and your role. A vessel may need to undergo a survey to make sure it meets the design, construction, stability, and safety equipment standards. It must also have a unique vessel identifier. To operate your vessel, it must have a safety management system to ensure the safety of everyone on board. If you work on a domestic commercial vessel, you must have the right training and certificate to do your job. For information about certificates and safety rules, or to find out if you're exempt, visit amsa.gov.au.
There you go.
terrific. Thanks, Laurie.
No worries.
All right, I'll just see if I can't get my presentation going again. Awesome. Yeah, so a big thank you to everyone who filled that in. It is really great to get that information, and we will provide more info once we get going. Awesome. Crikey. Sorry, my computer's having fun today, but we'll get there. Another one that's happening right now is a consultation by the federal government in relation to a Privacy Act, the Federal Privacy Act review. This report, they're seeking feedback by the end of March, 31st of March, as it says on the screen. The report recommends a range of changes to the Privacy Act. Hawker Britain have provided a summary in a blog. Their link's on the screen. I've also put the link to the Attorney General's webpage about this on there. The interesting bits about this, which is what Hawker Britain, who sort of summarised it, they've pulled out some information that the review is proposing to remove the small business exemption from the Privacy Act. So currently there's an exemption for small businesses. The interesting bit is they say it would only be removed after an impact analysis was conducted to understand the impact of the removal on small businesses, develop appropriate support in consultation with small businesses, and determining most appropriate way for small businesses to meet their obligations proportionate to the risk. And then the other one is that they need to ensure small businesses can actually comply if they put those obligations on small businesses. So this will actually impact quite a lot of operators. They also, in the short term, recommend exempting from the Act small businesses that obtain consent to trade in personal, there's an exemption in the Act if you obtain consent to trade in personal information. They're recommending that be removed, and they're recommending that the collection of biometric information for facial recognition technology is an exception to the exemption, which gets very complicated. Anyway, the other one is that organisations must dictate and record the purposes for which you collect, use and disclose personal information at the time of collection. And if you want to use it, that info for a secondary purpose, you've got to record that purpose before you undertake that. So it's actually tightening up how information can and can't be used. The other one is there's specific recommendations in relation to privacy of children and people experiencing vulnerability. So they talk about, it actually brings in a definition of a child, because I think at the moment the privacy legislation doesn't have any specifics around children. That's my understanding of it. So they're saying anyone under 18, but they're also saying that organisations would need to assess if an individual under 18 can actually consent on a case-by-case basis. And this will apply to organisations that deal with private information of children. So at the moment, everything goes through adults. I think they're starting to say that it'll broaden it out to obtaining consent from children as well. That's what they're recommending. So this hasn't gone through, but it's in the review process at the moment. It talks about requiring entities to consider the best interests of the child when collecting, using or disclosing any personal information, and a children's online privacy code with requirements on how to design an online service that considers the best interests of child users. So it is an interesting development in relation to privacy. Obviously, I think this is more and more important as more and more of our information is out there, but I think it's an important one to be aware of. So I just wanted to flag it, and particularly for organisations who are routinely dealing with children and small businesses, there are potentially going to be some changes that we need to be aware of and make sure that we're complying with that. And, you know, I just wanted to flag it here today. But as I say, there's opportunities to make submissions, but it's only by the end of this month. So if you're interested in that, it's worth having a look at, particularly that blog from Hawker Britain. It sort of puts it into more plain language than what you might find on the Attorney General's webpage about it. I saw Laurie smile then. I think you've had a look at it too, Laurie, haven't you? Yeah. So that it's worth having a look at that blog, I would say. Yeah.
Definitely. It's very lawyer speak.
Yeah. Questions, comments on that one? All right, cool. All right. We will look at putting a submission in. I think some of it really makes sense, but I think it's also a matter of getting your head around what all of that is actually going to mean for a range of different organisations. Sorry, I think I cut someone off.
You know, Don, I was just going to say that Bill's put up a question in the chat about taking photos of children on sports day.
Yeah, that comes into where and when, and if it's in a public place, and there's quite a few different takes on that one. And that's one that schools tend to provide advice on, but that also will apply. Same thing, school camps, so consent for images and that sort of space too. And it's, you know, often that might be covered off in one tick box on a excursion form, but what this is actually saying is it's consent of the child, not just consent of the guardians and carers. So that's what you need to be wary of, and it goes to what Graham was just talking about, actually, of the human rights of everyone involved, not. And so this is where it needs to be managed, and we need to understand what these changes could actually mean. So, yeah. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because I think it has a few different wrinkles in this one. So it's worth flagging.
So,
oh, sorry.
I just thought I might put my 2 cents in.
Yeah, Derek.
That isn't there almost. So I can see scenarios under which not taking a photo of a child and not displaying it could negatively affect the child if they've grown up in a culture or family where, you know, being celebrated with poster picture being displayed is part of their culture. And so just my 2 cents that there could be a concern that we could swing too far the other way, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Bill.
I have the same concerns. So, for example, you know, I do the commentary for the Brisbane Schoolgirls Rowing Association. They have a video stream of it. The possibility that 1 or 2 girls in a race might not agree to be videoed would basically preclude us broadcasting the event.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And this is the sort of stuff that I think when it's going to come to it, it does talk about what's in the best interests of the child. I mean, but if that becomes a condition of competing in a race, that you agree for your image to be broadcast, that's where it's going to come into it. But it's also about, is it informed consent and all that sort of business, which is important. So I think that's where every organisation is going to have to consider what this means. I think for a while, I'll give Outdoors Queensland as an example. Our policy about use of privacy information is we comply with the privacy principles in the Privacy Act, even though we're a small business. We don't actually technically have to under the law, but we made a commitment that we will. That's in our policy. So we're actually going over and above. So if any personal information we have, it doesn't get shared, we don't do it. But under the law, we technically could, which is a bit weird as a small business. So I think that's why the board have taken that position that no, we're actually going to do more. So effectively, if this goes through and it's only in review, we'd actually just be doing what we legally have to do as a small business, just like any other business has to do. So some of this is, I think, bringing small businesses, etc., up to the same level as others. But the new stuff about children and vulnerable people, or people experiencing vulnerability, is actually the way they've described it, which is good, I think. Those changes are intended to protect that group of people, which I think possibly haven't had the same level of protection or the extra level of protection that perhaps they should have. So that's that piece. And I think the big question is, if there's unintended consequences, this is our opportunity to flag those that we think they may not have considered or that should be considered more. Alrighty. Another opportunity, sport and rec funding in Queensland. So just last week, Sport and Recreation announced an updated funding program for state level organisations. I'm not sure, I'm just looking at the list, not sure if there's anyone on the list who this will apply to, but it's actually, there's a current active industry fund which expires in June. And then they're bringing in this new program, Active Industry Base Fund, which is going to start from 1st of July. Sport and Rec are doing some information sessions in relation to this. So if you're eligible for it, you should have already been notified about what it's all about if your organisation, and including, they've actually put specific requirements in this program for state active recreation organisations. And we've contacted the Outdoors Queensland ordinary members who might be eligible to let them know about it. So and hopefully some of those will attend some of those information sessions. So I just wanted to flag that is underway as well. The Brisbane 2032 Legacy Plan Survey closes today. I think it's 5 o'clock today. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, you still have time. And that's then going to inform the Legacy Forum, which is in a few weeks. Which is all about developing this Brisbane 2032 Legacy Plan, which is the blue box on the screen there, with text that's probably too hard to read. It is worth doing this survey. So if you want to have your say in relation to that, please do. Yeah, so I think it's well worth getting on there and having a look. So the more people who do the survey, I think the more voices will be added into that process. My next slide is also probably too small to read, but this is about the National Strategy for Volunteering, which was launched just a couple of weeks ago by Volunteering Australia. It's actually a really important strategy for the outdoors. A lot of our organisations involve volunteers in delivery of activities, but also for oversight and governance through volunteer boards, including Outdoors Queensland. And we do appreciate, the work that so many volunteers across the outdoor sectors actually do for us. The vision, I just popped the vision statement there, where it says volunteering is the heart of Australian communities. And it's too small to read on there, but Mark's just shared some info there in the chat, I think, on this one. But the interesting bit is where they're talking about making sure volunteers feel respected and know their contribution makes a difference, but people will volunteer more often, and volunteering is valued and properly considered across society. So it is a really important document, I think, for all of us. So it's worth having a look at this one. And understanding what's in the strategy. It's a pretty decent document, so it might be at least having a look at the executive summary that's in it, with some good infographics and that sort of thing in there as well. So yeah, questions, comments on that one? No one's going to volunteer to go first. See what I just did there, Mark?
Oh dear, Dom. That was bad.
Oh, that's actually quite good for me. Anyway, moving right along. Some free workplace planning courses. This is a Queensland government one. Thanks, Graham. Yeah, Graham's just popped his email address in the chat as well. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this workforce planning course for business owners and managers. This is a partnership with University of Sunshine Coast. So it's a free course in relation to workforce planning. So there's a link there. Mark's just shared again because he's so efficient. There, so it's worth having a look at. And you can also get credits if you do these micro credentials. So it's worth having a look at if you're interested in then going on with further study in relation to it. But it's just all about workforce planning for your organisation, which of course is an important piece, and it's free. So we've also put a story up on our website about it too. So thanks, Mike. A quick one is really a reminder more than anything that 2023. Sorry, Brad. I just saw your comment, mate. Got training to deliver for staff working with vulnerable youth right now. Do you want to talk to that?
Previously, the Children Commission used to have an online training that we could access. Take a couple of hours just to go through that online training annually for staff, and they've
like a refresher sort of thing. Sorry to cut you off. Like a refresher one, is it?
Yeah, and they've stopped delivering that online training now.
Oh, okay.
And I just didn't know whether organisations have something that they deliver to staff.
I know as a childcare owner, we put all our staff through a child protection training course, but I don't know if that is aimed at obviously the 0 to 6 age group and may not be suitable for the older age group that most of you would be dealing with. Yeah.
So sport and recreation also have one that they call it member protection courses. So they run it. It's an online training that they do every now and again as well. I don't know when I don't think they've done one yet this year, but that one's aimed really at sports organisations, but it's broadly applicable. So, and that one's a free one as well. I don't know about the Department of Communities one. Sorry, Bradley, but yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that one and certainly share those when we see them. But it's an important piece of work to do, particularly if you've got new staff, but even as a refresher for existing staff. So
yeah, we just got it, I suppose, to undertake training, annually just to keep up to speed with everything.
Absolutely, yeah. It's good practice for every organisation that's dealing with kids on a regular basis. So yeah, thanks, mate.
I've just found something in Brave Hearts where we do ours. I'll put it in, maybe useful, may not. It's in the chat.
Thanks, Derek. Awesome. This is what we're all about: conversation and sharing resources. Thank you. This one about the Year of Accessible Tourism. So the Queensland government, we're all talking about the Year of Accessible Tourism in Queensland for 2023. But they've included quite a bit of funding for tourism businesses, and they've also released an accessible tourism toolkit and a range of resources online for that one, which are really interesting. I've had a bit of a look at those resources, and they look really good. They're quite comprehensive and good detail about guidelines, templates, and a checklist to, I guess, enhance the accessibility of any business. It doesn't have to be a tourism business. And they've got some online learning modules that is about improving accessibility. So I'd really suggest people have a look at it. It is tourism focused, but I think it could apply to any organisation that's operating. So it's worth having a look at that one. Again, free resources, and free is one of my favourite words. So when we can find those things. And I've actually spoken to some people who helped develop those, and they really want them shared and used as much as possible. And that's about making the difference while we have this year of accessible tourism, making a difference that actually flows onto future years as well. So, yeah. And Laurie, yep, you've got some New South Wales resources as well there. Terrific. I'm pretty sure that, you know, most of it will work except during state of origin period when we will refuse to go near your resources. So,
and don't be confused about the time zone if you're logging into a webinar.
Yeah, you'll probably only be able to log it in, you know, an hour out of work or something. Anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. No, but honestly, I know people have gone into the New South Wales. You can register, but the e-learning platform is really, really good. So I had good results from my guys.
Cool. Thanks, Laurie. That's pretty much the end of the agenda. Just a few reminders. I don't think we've got any inside the outhouse orators. I'm not sure when their next session is. I haven't seen an update recently. Dave Maskell said they're working on that, but behind the scenes. So yeah, I've just popped a reminder in there about some of our resources, including the websites, the e-bulletins and social media. If you're not subscribed to the e-bulletin, do yourself a favor, and the same thing with the social media side of things. Subscribe to or follow our social media sessions. The couple of consultation pieces, the Brisbane 2032 Legacy and the Privacy Act review, also the domestic commercial vessels. The picture there's of stand-up paddleboard, which isn't included in the national system, but kayaks and canoes are. So it's one of those weird things that we talked about a fair bit last week or last month. We will keep working with the panel about that review and making sure we get good outcomes. Last dot point there is the Outdoors Queensland Forum and AGM on the 15th of March. Just the reminder about that. If you're a financial member, please fill in the forms so that you will be counted towards the quorum. If you can attend, that'd be great. But if you can't, you can always appoint a proxy, and you can appoint the president or an actual individual who you know is going to be attending as well. So, does anyone have anything else? We've got a couple of minutes still.
Dom, did you want to cover off on the changes to Great Getaways?
Yes, mate. Yeah. So we have been running the Great Getaways program, and I meant to put a slide in about that. Sorry, Mark. Yeah. So we actually discontinued our Great Getaways Queensland program. Partly we didn't have enough bookings for it to be sustainable, which is unfortunate. Mark has done the lead on that and has done a power of work on it for the last 18 months. But yeah, we just haven't made it work. So it's quite disappointing. It's all about connecting older Queenslanders, older people with outdoor experiences. We sort of pivoted towards, to borrow an overused term, towards day activities rather than weekend activities, and we still struggle to get the numbers to make it work. The people who turned up to them loved it and came back to other ones. We had repeat attendees, but we just didn't get enough people in the end to make it work overall. So we will still keep working away in the background on how that might work. And if anyone's keen to take it on, we're happy to work with you and with the Australian Camps Association, who set the Great Getaways up in Victoria, to keep it rolling. But yeah, so that we do have some assets that we can help on that, and including some of the knowledge in Mark's head and probably my head, but yeah, also happy to share any of that as well, so that we can keep it rolling if people are interested in making it work. Do you want to add anything to that, Mark?
No, Dom, that's covered off quite nicely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? No, all good. Okay. Big thank you to everyone for coming. Our next session will be 11 a.m. Queensland time, Laurie, on the Friday, the 14th of April. So we're moving it back a week. We're normally the first Friday of the month, but the first Friday of April is Good Friday. So we won't be holding it that day. So we're going to go with 14th of April, which is also one of my brother's birthdays, but that's all right. It won't affect my performance, I don't think. So,
And guess what's 11 a.m. Sydney time too that date?
oh, you fixed your clocks by then?
You have.
We don't move ours. Ours just stay. We keep rocking along. Anyway, yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks to Mark for hosting today or co-hosting. A big thanks to Graham for presenting as well. Yeah, even though he's not here at the minute, he had to head off to actually get to work. Yeah, thanks. And thanks to everyone for joining us. A big thanks to our board who, you know, look after a lot of what we do, give us that oversight. And I'll finish up there. Like to encourage you to be kind to the planet, be kind to other people, and importantly, be kind to yourselves. Thanks very much.